Hello, everyone. I'm Chris Goodwin with the Mississippi Department of Archives and History. Welcome to this week's Histories Lunch program. We're in our home, the Craig H. Nielsen Auditorium in the Museum of Mississippi History and Mississippi Civil Rights Museum. And we're streaming live on both Facebook and YouTube, where these videos are available to watch anytime afterwards. If you've not already done so, please silence your phone. We're only a couple of weeks out from Halloween, so don't miss the display of creepy dolls from the mid-19th and early 20th centuries from our collection that's in the lobby. And then tomorrow, Thursday, October 17th, join us in the Welty Garden when the Mississippi College Jazz Band will play songs from Eudora Welty's record collection and jazz standards. There'll be free popcorn and lemonade, and Urban Foxes will be selling sweets and treats. The music starts at 5:30, so bring a lawn chair or a blanket to the Welty House, and we'll see you then. The traveling exhibit Atomic Alert, Confronting the Bomb in the New Atomic Age, has opened upstairs. And on Tuesday, October 22nd at 11 a.m., geologist Jonathan Laird of the Department of Environmental Quality will give a free gallery talk about the role of the Mississippi Geological Survey played in the nuclear testing at the Tatum Salt Dome there in South Mississippi in Lamar County. So come back next Tuesday for that. And then we'll have an architecture-themed history happy hour kicking off at 5 p.m. on Thursday, October 24th, with free admission, free food from Aplos, a cash bar, and music from Bill Ellison and Temperance Babcock. Finally, I hope you'll come back next week for History's Lunch when Everett Bandy will present They Lived Along the Mississippi, a history of the Quapaw. Today, I am delighted to welcome Margo Cooper to talk about her University Press of Mississippi book, Deep Inside the Blues. Margo Cooper is a photographer and oral historian. She's a longtime contributing writer and photographer for Living Blues magazine, and her work has appeared in the New York Times blog Lens. Cooper studied at the Maine Photography Workshops and earned her BA in Sociology and Anthropology from Colgate University and her JD from the Suffolk University School of Law. In addition to her photography, Cooper serves as an attorney and guardian ad litem in the juvenile division of the family court in Nashua, New Hampshire. Help me welcome Margo Cooper to the stage.
Yep. Thank you, Chris, and thanks for inviting me to present Deep Inside the Blues at History is Lunch, and thank all of you for coming here today. My story starts a couple of decades ago when I was back in high school, and a friend played Buddy Guy and Junior Wells' song Messin' with the Kid. And that was sort of like the lightning bolt moment of music just moved me, hearing Junior's vocals, playing the harmonica, Buddy Guy on guitar. I mean, it's a song that you have to get up and move to. And I call that moment sort of the planting the seed. And it took me a couple of decades before I could act on my desire to learn more about the music and the history and the blues. And this presentation is about my journey and Deep Inside the Blues. So I'm from New England, and after I was a public defender in the 80s, and that kind of work leaves you no time to do anything else. It's 7 days a week, days and nights. So I took a year off from the practice of law and started taking photography classes. And by 1993, I was going into the clubs around New England. The first House of Blues was actually in Cambridge, Massachusetts. We had many clubs, Johnny D's, Harper's Ferry. And this presentation begins and ends with my friend Luther Guitar Jr. Johnson, who played with Muddy in the 70s. He was living in New Hampshire at the time, so he was everywhere playing. We quickly became friends, and Luther had some health issues, diabetes and kidney disease, and I said, would you like me to start going to your doctor's appointments? and his doctors were near me, and for the rest of his life, whenever he was in New England, he eventually would stay with me days and weeks and months at a time, and I took him to all his appointments. Became his driver, his chauffeur, peddling his merchandise. This is Willie Big Eyes Smith, who was Muddy's drummer for 20 years. Calvin Fuzz Jones, who was Muddy's bass player and also played with Howlin' Wolf. Of course, Pinetop Perkins, who was with Muddy and many others. Shirley Lewis was living in Massachusetts. At the time I met her, she was from New Jersey, and fortunately I got to write her story. She had cancer, but we finished her story in time for her to live to see her story. Shirley said to me, "The blues come out of the roots of our gospel music and from people being free. It's a freedom music. Being free and being able to speak your mind, sing your songs, and say what is going on and how you feel. Music makes me feel complete. When I sing, I send out love. I'm hoping people receive my love in the way it is given. I believe love is the bottom line. If you give love, you're going to get love in return." Eddie Shaw from Greenville. This was at the Rhineborn, a famous little spot in Antrim, New Hampshire. Bo Diddley at Harper's Ferry, and we were very lucky. The owner of Harper's Ferry in February would bring many of the Chicago musicians to play, so this was my opportunity to hear Bo Diddley. Laverne Baker was performing at a club, primarily jazz club, at Scullers in Cambridge, Massachusetts. And again, I was lucky to see her. She died shortly after I took this picture, but I was just so impressed with her performance and her energy and joy, which I hope is communicated here. Muddy Waters Tribute Band were in the 90s when I started photographing. We're coming east quite a bit. So there's Willie Big Eye Smith on the left, and Calvin Fuzz Jones, and Pinetop, Paul Osher, who now I'm going to forget, I think it was this year or last year. Unfortunately, we lost him to COVID, but I was able to talk to him, and some of his words are in the book. Big Daddy Kinsey and Jimmy Rogers standing behind Big Daddy. This was Pinetop Perkins and David Maxwell backstage at the event in Portland. David had brought some liquor to share with Pinetop, and again, it was a joyous reunion. If those of you who don't know David Maxwell, he died of cancer too young, but he learned from Pinetop and Otis Spann, and writes beautifully about both of them. T Model Ford. I met T Model Ford before coming down here. This was at the Middle East in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and I just love the way his hand is in the background. And of course, here we are with Buddy Guy and Junior Wells. The Muddy Waters Tribute Band was performing at Buddy Guy's Club in Chicago, and I was ecstatic. I got to see my heroes and even capture them in this photograph, which I love. They were not posing for me. There was somebody else who asked if he could take their picture, and so I got the photo. Here is Smokey Wilson at Harper's Ferry. Smokey Wilson was, I believe, born in Leland, and Billy Johnson from the Highway 61 Delta Blues Museum talked to me about Smokey. So did John Horton, and so I have a description of him in the book, but I love this moment. He was, I believe, living in California. Hubert Sumlin beloved Hubert Sumlin playing at Johnny D's in Somerville, Massachusetts. Of course, the stories of Howlin' Wolf and Hubert Sumlin playing together are infamous, and he was important to Howlin' Wolf's sound, and continued to play for quite a while after Howlin' Wolf died, and of course was beloved by folks like Eric Clapton and the Rolling Stones, as many of these musicians were. Jimmy Rogers at a little club in Massachusetts. So from New England, after meeting so many of these musicians and listening to the music that I loved, I realized that most of these individuals were born in Mississippi, and I just thought to myself, my God, these guys were alive when there was sharecropping. These guys were alive when there was Jim Crow segregation. What was that like? I wanted to learn the stories behind the music and felt I needed to go to Mississippi, and I started coming down in 1997 and have been coming down ever since, and I feel very lucky to have had the experiences I've had. Here's Sam Carr. I wrote his story, Oral History, for Living Blues, and all my stories are in the words of the musician, not my words. I felt it was important to be able to give them an opportunity to talk about their life, and that they could do it much more eloquently than I could, and that is the truth. And I, as I say in the book, through each of the oral histories and people that I met along the way, I'm thankful to these people because they were my teachers. They are my teachers, and that I honor them by they shared their lives with me, and I wanted to make sure their stories are told and that as many people know about them as I can tell their stories. Here's Sam Carr at home with Andrew Shine Turner. Shine is fortunately still alive and playing today. I pulled up in the driveway. I was just looking to visit Sam and his wife Doris, as I always did when I came to Clarksdale, stayed with them. But this scene was just happening. It wasn't posed. And I quietly, pulled out my camera and photographed. And this is one of my favorites. Honey Boy Edwards. I hope many of you know about Honey Boy. And he wrote a beautiful book with, I think, Michael Frank's help, The World Don't Owe Me Nothing. And it's a great book to read, and I love the Grateful Dead cap that he's wearing at this particular time. Of course, B.B. King, and this picture was taken at Club Ebony after the Homecoming Festival. I'm sure as many of you know that after the festival, B.B. would perform at Club Ebony. This is Farmer John. He recorded for Fat Possum, and I got to meet him early on, and he would just try and grow whatever he could in his plot of land in Greenville, Mississippi. David Durham. With his beagles, he loved to hunt, and he often performed at Club Ebony as well. Robert Bilbo Walker was living in Alligator, but spent a lot of time in Clarksdale, and sometimes played with Sam Carr, and I wrote his story for Living Blues in his words. This was Robert and his family, some of his children and his wife visiting Sam Carr at their home. Joe Cole, just sitting on his porch in Bobo, Mississippi. He had left He was the last of many people who lived on the land, and he was allowed to continue to stay there. He was born in Alabama, he told me, on June 17th, 1921. I went to the Army in World War II, Okinawa and Japan. When you come out, you don't want to be back down like a slave. When he got overseas, a man was a man. When you come back here, they want you to bow on your knees to them. A man fought in the Army and risked his life. He should be recognized. Poor monkeys in Marigold. Unfortunately, not much. There's still some of the buildings standing, but some of it is lost. There is a Blues Trail marker out there, and it was a popular place for quite a while. This was, so you saw the outside of Poor Monkeys, and here we are inside Poor Monkeys. I was sitting with these two women at the table, and what this just happened right in front of me, and I took the picture. And over again, I mean, this is a small example, but, I met poor monkey Willie Seabury. I went to the club early, and I said, is it okay for me to come there? And he said yes. And, I just sat at the table with these two young women. But over and over again, my experience of Mississippi was finding people who were welcoming, black or white, just welcoming, come sit with me. Eddie Cusick and his wife, the first time I went to the bait shop in Greenville, I didn't know anybody, and I'm just sitting there alone, and Eddie and his wife were sitting behind me and said, come join us. And it's part of my beautiful experience of Mississippi. Arthur Lee Williams playing at Eddie Mae's Cafe. It's no longer in Helena, but I've seen on so many occasions, somebody's immersed in playing their music, and somebody else just, isn't paying attention, jostles them, and it's all part of the scene. There were little festivals on Nelson. I can't remember if this was Nelson Street in Greenville, but I just love the dancers. T Model's wife, Stella, is sitting here on the front steps with her granddaughter, Stella. And I got to know T Model, and Stella, I wrote T Model's oral history for Living Blues and spent a lot of time with them through the years. But this was a special moment, as many of them are. Here is T Model with Stella's grandson, Gentle, but he's known as Stud. And much to my delight, I would see Stud, he would tug at T Model's T-shirt because he wanted to play the drums when he was little, and I did see him do that. And I saw him a few years ago. He was back in Mississippi, and I just saw him play in front of Catheads for part of the Cathead Mini Blues Fest, and it was just a delight. And he's thinking about moving back, and that would be wonderful. Here's James Super Chicken Johnson. This was, I think, 1998. The club doesn't exist anymore, but, the woman who he knew just got on stage with him, and, there they are. And, it's part of the joy of just the small clubs and musicians and fans know one another. Super Chicken was just down here. I was here for the book festival in September, and he was playing and is still, playing today, and makes his own beautiful guitars. I wrote his oral history. We worked on it together for Living Blues. Elsie Ulmer, I wrote Elsie's story for Living Blues, and you'll see some slides. He was just a beautiful person. I would spend, while I would work on his story with him, I would stay overnight at his home in Laurel, Mississippi, and he could play many, many instruments. His family members were the same way, and this was an unusual story because in his community, where he spent time, Stringer, a number of folks, black and white, their fathers and grandfathers, played together, and he introduced me to some of his friends so that I could meet them. Elsie said to me, "Singing in the fields was where everything come from. All the blues come out of the field, and I just be picking cotton, humming, listening. I hear somebody way over yonder sing. I woke up this morning, my head was bad. My baby done left me, and I was all so sad." Elsie said, "He going to pick about 900 pounds that day. Hey, baby," he's getting louder, and everybody's listening. "Come home with me." Hat raggedy, coat raggedy, shirt raggedy, red handkerchief in his pocket, overalls grown, shoes tied up with wire, patches on his knee. Lord have mercy, now I'm fixin' to tell you about the blues. Elsie said to me, "There was no mixin' in them days, but I can tell you this, the white boys and girls that I knew and was raised up around, we got along like brothers and sisters. Lord have mercy, we did. Their daddies would kill 'em if they didn't. We couldn't meddle, call each other names. I can prove that today, because a lot of folks are still living. It just makes you cry to see how we got along and to see how much prejudice there was everywhere else. When God made everybody, nobody can help how they're made. God made a bouquet, like you got a bouquet of flowers, different colors. You ever see them flowers growling at one another? No, you don't. You ever see trees fighting? And again, this is why I say to you, it was so important to me to record these stories in their words. There's poetry here, and their words could be published as poems, and I wish that they had had the opportunity for that to have been done while they were alive. This is again, that's Joe Cole again. Big Jack Johnson. Betty. I was Joshua, nicknamed Razorblade Stewart, and I was working on a story with him, and we went back to Jonestown. And Betty came walking across the fields. Betty was about 90. She's going to see what's going on in her town. Who's this stranger coming here? And I got to meet with Betty several times, and on the day that I made this photograph, the light was just so beautiful. I said to Betty, "Can I take your picture?" And she said, yes. James Super Chicken Johnson, again, he was taking me back to the area where he grew up, and the light was just so beautiful that day. And just, driving, I would often drive around the back roads. As you know, many buildings have been torn down, and many buildings, as I've gone back to places, are gone, which is the history. Some of Mississippi's history is just being demolished. I mentioned Joshua Razorblade Stewart. This picture was taken in front of Betty's, and again, the light and the moment to me were just beautiful. And I wrote, as I said, Josh's story and his words for Living Blues. And many of these people are so happy to have their stories written in Living Blues, published, and they say, she wrote my book. She wrote my book. Eddie Cusick, loved Eddie, and as I told you, I mean, there I was sitting by myself, didn't know a soul, and Eddie and his wife invited me to sit with them. Somebody else had written his story for Living Blues, and Eddie was getting older, and I said, please, can we work together? I want to make sure that your words are preserved, your story in your words. And we worked on his story, and it's part of Deep Inside the Blues. He said, I'd be picking cotton, plowing the mules, and I'd be singing the blues. That helps solve problems. You don't know if you'll get to the other side of the field. You sing, it pacifies your mind. You go further than you think. I'd sing, baby, please don't go, the older blues. People would tell my mama, that brown boy gonna be something. And this photograph was taken, in back of his house in Leland, Mississippi. Frank Frost. I took this picture in 1998 at Sunflower, and I wanted to give him that picture the following year. I saw him at King Biscuit. He was in a wheelchair. He and Sam Carr had played together. They were part of the Jelly Roll Kings, and I asked Sam if he could bring me, but Frank wasn't well, as I said, so I never got to deliver the picture. And I started thinking to myself, how many people have passed without their stories being told? And it was so important to make sure their stories were told. I said to myself, I'm going to do as much as I can to record as many stories as I could. And that's what I started doing. Oops. We have a Mickey Rogers should be coming up. Okay. So these are, Mickey Rogers is going to turn 80 later this year. He's still here in Greenville. I just met with him early, actually saw him twice. And Mickey, this is in Pantherburn, and here again, this is where he grew up. And we went back this spring, and the building is gone. Mickey grew up in Mississippi, and then his father moved to Chicago, and he went up to Chicago as a child. And he came down in the summer because his mother had come back and his grandparents were here, and he took the train with Emmett Till. It was 1995. And they each got off at their respective stops. And that summer, Emmett Till was killed. And his mother and grandmother said, you have to go back north. And Mickey said, my mother and grandmother said Emmett whistled at a white lady. I asked, why did they kill him? They said, that's what they killed him for. Just for whistling? You can kill somebody for that? That was a cotton house that on the land where he spent time. And Mickey, as I said, Mickey spent time in Chicago and Detroit, so plays blues, soul. He told me he's singing and playing in church. This is Willie Big Eyes Smith. Again, you saw him at the beginning. This was a picture in I think it was for the Pinetop Perkins Foundation homecoming. One year, I worked with Willie on his oral history for Living Blues. We would meet in Mississippi. He was born in Helena, Arkansas, but he came down quite frequently, was always at King Biscuit. And Willie said to me, Emmett Till was killed in 1955. I went to the funeral home in Chicago and seen him in the open coffin. It was only about 3 blocks from my mother's. I went there and seen him. You've seen the pictures with his face, right? But I'm looking at it with my natural eyes. I was only 19 years old. I was mad as hell. Damn right. Sidell Davis, who was from Arkansas, lived, thankfully, a long life. He had polio and some other health issues, but beloved by everybody. And because he lived a long life, played with generations of blues musicians. This was my first trip to Mississippi in 1997. I had gone to the West Point, the Howlin' Wolf Museum had a festival, and the next day we went, Dr. Joe, who was a sponsor of the museum and festival, brought me to Annie's house. Her husband was a cousin of Howlin' Wolf's, and she had a bedroom for Howlin' Wolf. And, you know, the moment, again, was meaningful to me. It was a beautiful moment, and I asked if I could take Annie's picture, and she said yes. Monroe Jones, waiting to perform at the Highway 61 Blues Festival in Leland a long time ago. Letitia was walking towards me with her twins. Her father was R.L. Boyce, a hill country musician who just passed, unfortunately, earlier this year. And I knew from her dad that Letitia's also passed. But the light was beautiful, and I asked if I could take this picture. Mama Jean, this was not, I was visiting, one of R.L. Burnside's sons was there, and I was visiting with him, and it just turned out Mama Jean was getting ready to go to church and was dressed exactly as you see her, and I was lucky to have the opportunity to make this photo. Driving around the back roads of Mississippi, as I said I frequently did, I came upon this beautiful old church, and I've never seen one like it again, and my guess would be it's not standing, but I don't know. I was here, I would be going to the Otha Turner's picnic, and it would happen to be the time when the baptisms were taking place at Moon Lake. This was the 4 ministers after they finished the baptism. Eden Brent out of Greenville, Mississippi. She's performing at Club Ebony this Thursday, and Eden's wonderful. Mississippi Slim. I started writing his story, and unfortunately he died before I finished, but at least I was able to get part of his story in his words. This is in Clarksdale. When I started going to the Highway 61 Blues Festival, I think around at least by 2003, in the early days it was a 2-day event, and on Sunday the event would take place at Holly Ridge. That's young John Horton in the background on the stage, and again, just juking, having a good time. Willie Foster out of Greenville. Beloved Bobby Rush. This is actually the first year I came to Mississippi. I had seen him at the House of Blues in Cambridge, but Bobby was performing the weekend I came down. I call it the trifecta weekend because of Bobby Rush, and I met Otha, as you'll hear. And I love the picture with, the dancers raising her arms. And this was when Bobby was playing at Bryant's Farm. It was just a small little place. And of course, as you know, he headlined, or may know, he headlined King Biscuit this year, and of course, it's played everywhere. This is Joe Ayers playing instrumental, and you'll see pictures of folks from the hill country. This is Joe Ayers. Joe and Trenton, his son. R.L. Burnside. R.L.'s grandson, Cedric, and his son, Gary. Kenny Brown. Trenton Ayers. This was Otha Turner, his family carried on the fife and drum tradition and had a picnic at his old place outside Sanatobia. And in those days, Otha would kill the goat, and some men from the community would help him slaughter the goat, and they were cooked in these big pots. And so it was also, the festival or his picnic was known for the goat sandwiches, as well as 2 nights of music, fife and drum music. Otha, thank God, lived to be into his 90s and, would play throughout the night. Here's Otha with the drums, fife. This is his granddaughter, Sharde. I first saw Sharde. She was 7 years old when I came in 1997. And Sharde and I just worked the past 2 years on her oral history for Living Blues, and that story will be published in the next edition, the holiday edition of Living Blues, which should come out next month. Calvin Jackson, Cedric's father at Otha's picnic. And just, these are the things, the moments that happen. Andre is Otha's grandson who's drumming here. I mean, the intensity, I don't know how many or if any of you had the opportunity to go to Otha's picnic. It was incredible, and everybody would gather around the fife and drum players, dancing, screaming, just as you see it here. This is Sharde. She was a teenager at this time with her cousin, Otha's grandson, Robert. And Otha died in 2003, and his daughter, Bernice, they died, I can't remember now, within a day or hours of one another, and there was a funeral for the 2 of them. And here Sharde, as I think she was 13, her cousins and Otha's grandsons have the drums, and that's her mother beside her. This is Cadillac John. who is 97 years old this year, and he is still playing harp, singing. He played at Juke Joint. He played at Red's Old Time Festival this year. He played in Greenville. I didn't see that show. And you shouldn't miss miss him playing. But he grew up. He and his brothers had a gospel group, and then he and one of his brothers would play blues in the streets of Sunflower, and they would see B.B. King, on the street at the same time. And when they would go to the radio station on Sundays, B.B. would be there. We're going to close out this presentation with Cadillac singing in my car. I just recorded while he was singing You Gotta Move. And this is a tribute to my friend Luther Johnson, who died a year and a half ago. That's Cadillac again. You'll hear Cadillac singing with in a minute. Maybe I have to go one more. Yep.
Oh, you got to move. You got to move. You got to move. I say with the Lord, get ready. You got to move. You may be here, Lord. You may be there. You may be buried, Lord, anywhere. Tell them when my God, whoa, get ready. You got to move. Yeah, you got to move. I want one more thing I want to say. You may be young. You may be old. Nothing but a baby. Oh, you got to go. Tell them when my Lord, whoa, well, get ready. You got to move, yeah.
Thank you. I wanted to leave time for questions and answers or dialoguing, and Chris is going to handle that.
What is your feeling about the future of the blues?
Well, it's interesting. Sharde is 34. As I said, I've just spent time with her over the last 2 years, and I've watched her over many, many years. She just got married this year. She is carrying on the picnic tradition. I went to the picnic in August, year 74. She plays fife and drum. Younger family members were at the picnic, and they've been learning naturally, not as if they're drawn to it. She's recording. She's out doing, touring. Cedric is 45. So they're both young in today's world. Cedric has achieved, stardom. He's traveled around the world and has been touring heavily this year. They honor, and what's beautiful is to have, known them as youngsters, and how whenever they play, they honor their grandfathers and always talk about their grandfathers. At King Biscuit, they always have a stage for young people, and sometimes the young people play with other musicians on other stages. So I mean, witnessing that, and as I have over the years, I hope there's hope for the Roots. His nickname is Rel. Harrell is, I think, 17, and he's in high school, and I saw him earlier this year, plays harmonica, guitar, and plays the old style of blues. So I'm hopeful for the future. I guess a bigger question is how to get more, so younger people, like there's the Pinetop Perkins workshops, there's blues in the schools, people trying to go to the young to where the young people are and tell them. But we need more young people coming to the festivals, coming to hear and support the music. But I am, in Clarksdale, Big A Sharade and Lee Williams, they grew up in the Delta, took classes at the Delta Blues Museum. They continue to teach today. So they were around when, Big Jack Johnson and other people, and they carry on beautifully, and it's a lot of fun to witness.
Ms. Cooper, good presentation.
Thank you.
You brought out the names of the real blues singers. My question to you is, most of our blues singers back then had fake names. Guys like Bobby Rush, B.B. King, Willie Gateman Brown. B.B. King name is Riley King, and Bobby Rush is Emmett Ellis.
Yes.
And William Gateman Brown. Why did they all have fake names rather than have their real name?
That I can't tell you. I mean, but as I said, Luther was Guitar Junior Johnson, Willie Big Eyes Smith, Calvin Fuzz Jones. I mean, they talk about it in my stories. Muddy, gave everybody nicknames, and James Super Chicken Johnson. Again, the story is in the book, how he got the nickname Super Chicken. But as you're pointing out, yes, that was very common for the musicians to have nicknames, and we would need to speak to each of them to find out the particular story behind the nickname. But Cadillac tells, John Nolden tells the story in my book, and in his oral history for Living Blues, how he got the nickname. But they're certainly colorful.
We have a question from the live stream. Spence Fletcher asks if you've ever collaborated with Dick Waterman on any projects.
I did not, and unfortunately, I think he started doing, well, he was photographing, when I was still in school, and our paths did not cross, but I am aware of his work and the beautiful photographs that he made.
Alfred Duckett, professor of music at Jackson State, in my area is not familiar with that, but I'll bring you a place to go where these performers can get, where we can get a list of all these festivals. I'd like to give it to a colleague and to myself.
Sure. The Living Blues, I think it's in March, the March-April edition, lists festivals around the country, all nationwide, state by state. In this area, I don't know if you're familiar with Cathead. It's a store in Clarksdale. Roger Stoley owns it. But you can look up cathead.biz, and there's a music schedule, and he'll list by week, like the music in Clarksdale, and they pride themselves in having music seven nights a week, and it lists the festivals in Clarksdale, but like King Biscuit and other local festivals. Sure. And also you can check. I mean, some of the musicians have websites, like a Cedric, of course, probably more of the younger musicians, where you can see where they're touring. But Roger Stoley under cathead.biz, every week there's a new posting.
You've probably addressed some of this already, but if you were suddenly in charge of Mississippi, and recognizing both the inherent and artistic value of the blues and the growing importance to tourism, what would you do to preserve the history and to nurture the future for its artistic and economic value?
I think it's important to offer venues for the musicians to play, getting the public to come out wherever those venues are. So promoting, I mean, people come to Clarksdale. The Benetonia Blues Festival is known through Jimmy Duck Holmes. Sharde's Picnic, but again, there could be a King Biscuit. We need to bring more people. We need to bring more attention to this great, to the great music that is still happening here. Make it affordable. Encourage young people to play, and for their friends and families and young people to come, so that people will, future younger generations will continue to support this music is critical. There were a number of Europeans from different countries here, which is important, but getting the word out. I know of some of the smaller festivals, but some of the festivals or events that are happening, younger people are good at. So I'm not good at social media, but making sure the word is out there so that more people and younger people are coming to hear the music, and getting younger people to support the little museums. I mean, there are a number of important museums with different collections here. I don't know, do all the tourists, do all the people know what's here? Because you could spend a couple of weeks or return, because there is so much to see. So making sure people do know that, and what a positive, I can only speak for myself, but every trip is great. Seeing the musicians, young and old, is thrilling. And another thing that's special about down here, where else can you get, to the front of the stage? It's like ridiculous, up north. I mean, there's smaller clubs, but, I don't want to go to a big venue where there's thousands of people. Here, it's personal. You can often talk to the musicians. They're glad to get the attention, engage with you, support musicians by buying their CDs, letting people know they have CDs out, working together across the board with, again, local venues, local museums. There's the blues trail markers, but there's other things happening, and working on publication promotion.
Thanks for that very informative presentation. I was just wondering, why do you think that the blues was created, that rich art form was created in the Delta where there's much poverty and ignorance?
Well, one of the things, what I can tell you, sir, and what comes out loud and clear in the book, for example, singing in the fields, singing behind the mule. Well, you know, when I would work with people on their oral histories, that music was the release. That music got you through the day, got you to go up and down that field. Singing, and I'm not the one who really, it's not my experience. Again, that's why I think it's important to hear other voices. But singing in church. I mean, many of these musicians, the older musicians in particular, grew up in the church. And the voices or their vocals, I think you can hear, when I would listen to some of the older musicians, that the quality of the vocalists are incredible. Sharde, I learned, from doing this oral history. As a child, she was singing in the church choir. Here's what Joe Ayers said. You heard his music. Joe is alive today and plays at some of the smaller festivals. He knows the history of Lamar and Benton County like the back of his hand, can talk about musicians. From my experience, Joe said, all the blues comes from hard labor. Black labor, a hard day's work, pulling corn, chopping and picking cotton, being behind the mule and swinging the axes. This, and your woman done quit you, or was some other man gone away and left you. You're staying at the house all alone. All that falls right back, makes men sing the blues. Playing to get $1, a woman, to get out from behind the mule, was a big thing back in the day. But I would hear over and over many of the musicians, and again, it's stated in the book, how singing, going out in the field and singing to get through a day of work, hours of work under the hot, hot sun, singing was critical to being able to complete the day's work.
We've come to the top of another hour. We have copies of Margo's book, Deep Inside the Blues, for sale over here. If you didn't get a chance to ask a question, or if you have another comment for us, she'd be glad to talk to you while she's signing copies of the book. Don't forget that we have the live jazz in the Welty Garden this Thursday at 5:30. Weather should be perfect for that. We've got the gallery talk next Tuesday at 11 upstairs in the Atomic Alert Gallery. It should be really interesting to hear about that. And then come back next Wednesday for History's Lunch, when we'll have Everett Bandy talking about the history of the Quapaw Nation. For now, help me thank Margo Cooper for this fantastic program today.
Thank you.